Chapter 20. This is my first Ramadan since I came back, she said, in answer to Walid's question. Yes, you weren't with us last year, said Mahasan as she reached for another piece of bread. Summer had cut the loaves into small portions. Such thin loaves these days, shrinking while their price threatened to go up. The three of them were eating in the garden. No electric lights competed with the moon, no garden lights. The candle Summer had brought from inside was unnecessary and she blew it out. It was the middle of the month of Ramadan and the moon was full. From tomorrow it would shrink and lose itself. When the new crescent appeared, it would be the end of Ramadan, the end of fasting, visitors saying Eid Mubarak, and new clothes for the children. It was unusual to be alone with Walid and Mahasan, without anyone else, without the children. Hanan and her family were with their in-laws and they had taken Amir with them. It was supposed to be only Summer and Mahasan breaking the fast together, but at the first words of sunset azan, before they had time to eat any dates, the doorbell rang. When Summer dragged open the garden gate, it was Walid. She had been so pleased to see him and surprised that she hugged him and he said, "What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you coming alone without your wife?" "She's eating with her parents," he said, and nothing more. Summer didn't ask him why he had not gone too. It became busy with the three of them breaking their fast, dates and kardakhe. Her aunt saying to Walid, "If we knew you were coming, we would have made grapefruit juice." After Summer put the jug of kardakh back in the fridge and threw away the date stones, they prayed. They prayed together with Walid leading and Summer and Mahasan standing close, their arms and clothes touching. Mahasan's movements were slow when she bent down, knelt down and put her forehead on the mat. Summer felt Walid deliberately pausing, slowing his pace so that Mahasan could keep up. When they finished praying, there was a power cut. The sudden silence of the air cooler, the sudden loss of the lights, the fan slowing down. In the stillness and faint glow of sunset, Summer counted her on her fingers 27 times. "There is no God but Allah, and I seek forgiveness from Allah for my wrongs and for believing men and believing women." Her aunt's voice was loud in the room. "Allah curse them and their day. Is this a time for this?" Them was the electricity company and the government, the two inseparable to Mahasan. She went on, "They've made us hate life." The room without the air cooler was gradually getting warm, but they could still see each other without the lights. Walid stood up and folded his prayer mat. "Aunt, the supplication of the one who is fasting is granted," he smiled. "The electricity company must be in a bad way by now." "The whole neighborhood is cursing them," said Mahasan, standing up. Summer took the mat from Walid and picked up hers and her aunt's off the floor. It seemed to her funny if the whole neighborhood was really cursing the company, all that energy rising up in the sunset air. Some people were so serious about power cuts, like her aunt, getting angry to the core. "Let's eat outside in the garden, Aunt," she said, and Mahasan sighed and nodded in agreement. Since that bad day when Mahasan had said, "You killed my son," the relationship between them had strangely improved, mellowed. It was as if Mahasan had said the worst she could possibly say, and there were no more accusations after that. In the kitchen, by candlelight, Summer heated the food, her shadows swinging huge against the walls. The kitchen was hot and airless without the fan, and she could hear the cockroaches stir and dart across the floor. But once they were seated outside, cushions on the chairs, a tablecloth on the wobbly table, and there was a breeze, the food tasted good and it felt better than indoors. Much better than a normal day eating indoors with the air cooler and all the lights. "Last Ramadan," said Mahasan, scooping up a stew with her piece of bread, "not once did the electricity cut. Things are supposed to get better and they just get worse. Walid did not speak much when he was eating, grunts of agreement with his aunt and pour me water, Summer. He looked tired, she thought, not just the normal tiredness from fasting. He might have quarreled with his wife, and that was why he had not gone with her to her parents. Instead, he was here with them today, and Mahasan was being tactful, not asking questions, glad to see him. Mahasan could be surprisingly tactful when it suited her. Walid's presence livened her up. If it had been only her and Summer, she would have been silent and withdrawn. When they finished eating, Summer carried the dishes to the kitchen and made tea. She put mint leaves in the pot, topped the sugar bowl with sugar. She put the candle on the tray to make her way back outside, walked from the kitchen to the hall to the sitting room, holding the tray with one hand and opening the door to the porch with another, closing it behind her so that stray cats would not creep in. On the porch there was the gray light of the moon on the pots of cactus plants and dark bougainvillea. She could blow out the candle now, walk down the steps of the porch to the voices of her aunt and Walid. The peace of sitting with them was not talking, not even listening while they talked. Walid, expansive now after the meal and with a glass of tea in his hand, making Mahasan smile. This good feeling was because of Ramadan, because of eating and drinking after fasting all day when the sun was too hot and it was thirst more than hunger, and not wanting to speak to anyone, economizing words, saying what was only necessary, what was only enough to get by. A whole month free like that and looking up at the round room knowing the month was halfway through, 2 weeks and the focus would be gone. The closeness to the depth would be gone. Tonight, like last night and every night until the end of Ramadan, she would wake up hours before dawn, pray once and again, read the Quran. This was the time of night when prayers were answered. This was the time of year. Summer, isn't Nahla's fiance working for Abu Dhabi's electricity company? Asked her aunt. Qatar, not Abu Dhabi. He's in Doha now. So he managed to get a good job after all. There was admiration in Walid's voice, envy under control. Yes, after fuss and quarrels and they had to postpone the wedding twice, said Mahasan. That girl was supposed to get married months ago and now she's still sitting. Working for Qatar's national electricity company is a very good job, said Walid. How did he get it? Someone who knew someone, said Summer. Of course, someone knew someone, he said, not unkindly. But who? I don't know. I could find out for you. I was just asking, he said dismissively and finished his glass of tea. They're not going to get married until December, said Summer, addressing her aunt. Nahla told me yesterday. They have the visa to sort out and she has resits. She wants to graduate before she goes there. That's better for her. Qatar is good. She can get a good job there, Mahasan said vehemently. She wanted everyone to get wonderful jobs, make good money, rise up in the world. I have a friend in Qatar, said Summer, a Pakistani woman I knew in Aberdeen. Her husband works in oil and he got transferred there. She likes it very much. Yasmin was now in Doha now with her daughter and Nazim. Yasmin was not even in the same country as Ray anymore. Summer could no longer write and ask her for news of him. When the option had been open to her, she hadn't, but now it still counted as a loss, and she thought, I have no link with him now, in terms of people. Who do I know who knows him? Diane? Farid? Neither of them can I ever have the courage to write to. But there were other links, a dream, an awareness that would suddenly come and stay with her. One day in the garden with the children, her feet bare and wearing another of Hanan's unwanted dresses, she had stood admiring the mud of the flower beds under the jasmine bushes, the way it was smooth and dimpled. She had pressed her toe into the mud, made a little depression, and then she had knelt down and touched the mud with her fingers. It was like dough or plasticine, and yet her fingers stayed clean when she looked at them. Clean, heavy mud. He was like that, heavy inside, not like other people. It was there with him when he came into a room and when he paused in the middle of saying something, paused before he answered a question she had asked. Another time, opening the fridge to get her aunt a glass of water, the sudden chill when she opened the fridge door on a day that was too hot, the blue cold frost, and it was Aberdeen where he was, his jacket and walking in grey against the direction of the wind. White seagulls and a pale sea, until her aunt behind her shouted, "What are you doing standing like an idiot with the door of the fridge wide open? Everything will melt." It was like that at first, the moment in the garden and the moment in front of the fridge, vivid, sudden. But the more she prayed for him, the more these moments came until they were there all the time. Not only thoughts, not only memories, but an awareness that stayed. Walid talked to her aunt, and the moon was still unchallenged by the lights of the city below. Here was a gift for her, clearer than water, clearer than sky. Ray saying, "I dreamt of you, the same dream. I am climbing stairs, steep stone steps, stairways that are damp and narrow. At the top I open a door and you are there. Am I happy to see you?" "You are, very much. You give me a glass of milk to drink." "Milk? How childish of me. But when I drink it, something happens. It can only happen in a dream. Pearls come out of my mouth. They fall in my hand. I hold them out and show them to you." Chapter 21. December. A cool wind blowing, carrying dust, and everyone's skin was chapped. She thought, "I love this time of year," and looked out of the car window at the trees that lined the Nile Avenue, thick trunks, and behind them the gushing blue Nile. She took off her sunglasses and looked until her heart hurt. Nahla was driving. They had gone to the video shop, and then Nahla had picked up her wedding cards from the printers. The cards were on Summer's lap, stiff white envelopes in packets. "Why are you quiet today?" asked Nahla. "Just looking around. Do you think you will miss Khartoum when you go to Qatar?" At the end of December, Nahla was going to get married and go away, move to Doha where Yasmin was, with her daughter and Nazim. If she ever could afford it, Summer would go and visit them both. "I don't know," said Nahla. "Not at first. Maybe later. Now we just want to get away. We've been delayed so much." "Inshallah, everything will go all right this time." "Sometimes I am afraid," said Nahla, changing gears. "Sometimes I think someone's going to die either from my family or his. Some senile uncle or grandmother or aunt is going to drop dead any minute and ruin everything." Summer laughed. "Just say inshallah, something like that won't happen." There was a boat on the river, its sails beige and brown. There were farmers on the opposite bank, bent over with hoes. The sun hit the moving water and made its surface light, but underneath it was blue after blue. Last December, in another place, there was no sun. Christmas, and Ray was in Edinburgh with his ex-wife's parents, presents wrapped up for Mari. Did he still do the same things? Drive around Scotland listening to Bob Marley? Ambush in the night, all guns aiming at me? Did he mark students' essays, watch CNN and VH1, read lots of books? Sometimes say, I'm an old-fashioned socialist. Sometimes say, behind the Western propaganda of Islamic fundamentalism. A year in his world might be shorter than in hers, not so many changes. Here, new laws were passed, prices went up, the old died easy, and children grew and changed. Did he still use the same Ventolin inhaler? Did he teach his students that the difference between Western liberalism and Islam was that the center of one was freedom and the other justice? She didn't know what he was doing this moment, this day, but it didn't matter. He was near, like in the dream, a dream of night on the porch, no moonlight, and she was a child playing square tiles, hopscotch. Many people were on the porch, adults standing talking in the dark, and he was one of them. She saw him, and it did not surprise her that he was here in this continent, in this country, on her aunt's porch. She was content to play, her hands on the wooden rails, skipping down the steps, the lines of tiles. She lost sight of him and forgot him like children forget, her mind on the steps until he put his hand on her shoulder, and when she looked up, he smiled and said, Did you think I wouldn't find you in the dark? She did not say anything. She became perfect and smooth like water from the garden hose. What kept her going day after day? He would become a Muslim before he died. It was not too much to want, not too much to pray for. They would meet in paradise and nothing would go wrong there, nothing at all. Yesterday she and Mahasin had gone to visit Tariq's grave, driving out of the city to where there were no building blocks. The wind, traveling and finding flat ground, sand, knowing Tariq was there, greeting him and all the others. Her aunt sat down on the ground, not moving, the Quran unopened on her lap. They found dirty things on the graves, things that the wind had carried through the barbed wire fence. Orange peel, an empty cigarette carton, the remnant of a nest, a Miranda bottle top, indented and blurred. It grazed Summer's hand when she picked it up. She started to clear the ground, on her hands and knees, reaching out, careful. She must not step over the people lying underneath. We should get that keeper fired. He should be doing this, she said to her aunt, but got no answer. She was afraid of finding worse than the rubbish she was now collecting, the signs of stray dogs. The keeper's job was to keep stray dogs out, keep the cemetery clean, protect the graves from thieves. But he was not, thought Summer, as a keeper of graves should be. He did not have clean white hair, a prayer mat, a melodious voice which recited the Quran. Instead, he was young and gangly with broken teeth and a smell of hashish. Now, as she gathered the rubbish, he stood leaning on the wall of his room, leering at her from far away. It made her angry, and she went up to him and said, If I find a dog shit, you will have to start looking for another job. He whined some excuse and skulked into the darkness of his room. She shouted after him, I am not joking, you know. She felt safe with all the graves around her, all the truth. Cleaning up, a greasy newspaper page with the familiar face of a politician, a razor blade, some leaves. When she finished, she washed from the tap near the keeper's room, made wudu again. She sat next to her aunt, put her arms around her, kissed her cheek. Then she took from her the Quran and started to read, word after word, verse after verse, page after page. Come in for a while, she said, when Nahla stopped the car in front of the house. No thanks, there's no time. Come and show the cards to Aunt Mahasan. I'll come in for a little while, but I might as well park the car at home. While Summer waited in the street so that she and Nahla could go in together, she spoke to Ray. She told him about the poster she had seen in the video shop, an advertisement for an American film, the actors' names written in Arabic and English. She told him how the film's name was translated in Arabic. Look who's talking, she said. Became in Arabic, me and Mama and Travolta. He laughed and said, that's much better name. He laughed and she saw Hanan driving around the corner, Amir in the front seat, Dahlia in the back. When they saw Summer waiting at the door, they started to wave. She pushed open the black metal door for them so that Hanan could drive into the shade of the carport. The door was heavy and it dragged on the ground, making grooves. Hanan parked the car, switched the engine off. Amir and Dahlia jumped out and the sounds of greetings was mixed up with the sound of slamming doors. There's a letter for you, said Dahlia, and hope was a reflex, as silly as blinking. Summer reached for the envelope, the platinum face of the queen, pearls around her neck, but she would know his handwriting. This was not his handwriting. She should not have hoped. This was not his handwriting. Instead, her name was written in Arabic. The envelope is stamped in sterling. Intrigue and the feel of paper tearing, the children's voices, Nahla greeting Hanan. The signature first, Farid. Farid Khalifa? Why would he write to her? The memory of meeting him in Aberdeen, Ray introducing them. Questions. He asked a lot of questions. He used to be a journalist and he was imprisoned by the Israelis. They gave him a rough time, Ray had said. They gave him a real rough time. Skim the lines of polite greetings, search, and Ray's name was there. At last, after all the months of just wanting his name, here it was. I am writing to you on behalf of my friend Ray Iles. Skim the lines down the page. Became about 4 months ago at my house. How pleased I am that Allah had expanded his heart to this Ramadan. Your permission, if you accept. Again, go over it again to catch every word, to really believe. The rush of this new knowledge, the feeling of being lifted up. She could even see herself, her head bent over the letter, her smile, red flowers on her scarf falling on her shoulders, the navy cardigan, buttons undone, her folded sunglasses sticking out of the pocket. Her skirt touched the faded straps of her sandals, was creased at the back from sitting in the car. And the easy way she moved away from the children, away from Hanan and Nahla, away from the carport to the garden. For she was being honored now. She was being rewarded, all alone, a miracle for no one else to acknowledge but her. The sky had parted, a little crack, and something had pierced her life. Under the eucalyptus tree and the sound of the birds, kneel down, the clean Vicks smell of the leaves in the shade and on the grass.